Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show for you. Yep, Bama has hired Kalen Deboer, and while we know this guy can win, there is the question, can he recruit? I don't think there's any question the guy knows his X's and O's. He's proven that everywhere he's been. But his recruiting at Washington was not that good. Now, granted, he'll be at Alabama, so it may not be as big a deal, but let's get into all this. And this is being reported all over. This is in Yahoo Sports by Nick Bromberg. Says he's heading to Alabama.
Alabama!
And, of course, he had a great season this year, undefeated, and he did beat Texas as well. And he had Michael Penix Jr., who was a great quarterback. Says the deal is worth about $10 million a year. They had to come up with $12 million to buy him out of Washington. So according to Ross Dellinger, it's a commitment of about $100 million. Whew, man. And you know darn well the buyout on his is going to be something stupid for a while. It'll probably be similar to Jimbo's, where they'll have to come up with $50 or $60 million if he doesn't work out. So it's a risky hire, but I mean, you're going to take a risk with anybody you hire nowadays, and you're going to have to pay them a huge buyout if you fire them. And if they want to leave, it's going to be a small buyout. It's a very lopsided deal when you're negotiating with coaches that are successful. They've got you by the short hairs, and they're going to take full advantage with their agent, Jimmy Sexton. Now, DeBoer's teams have gone 104-12, so he's had a lot of success. Talks about if there's a knock against DeBoer, it's the way the teams have recruited high school players. Washington's 2024 class was 46th in rivals, and Washington was 24th in 2023. But he has done well in the transfer portal. Both Penix and Dylan Johnson were transfers, along with a lot of other key players, so that's how he was doing it. Very similar to how FSU became successful. They went in the portal. They weren't recruiting all that well. They were doing okay, but they went out and found themselves a bunch of really good players that could immediately help. Now, that won't be the problem at Alabama. What they're going to have to do is keep the guys they got, and especially the ones that have just been recruited, because there's already wide receivers entering the transfer portal. I think they've already had two. One was a 5-star, and one was a terrific wide receiver as well. I believe he caught the big catch in the Iron Bowl. So there's guys already entering the portal. So once he gets done signing his $100 million deal, he's got to keep the guys that he's got. And for the Tennessee folks out there, I do want to let you know that Zalance Hurd has just received a crystal ball from On3, and now he's at 98.5% chance of signing with the Vols, the 5-star offensive lineman out of LSU. And that's all over Twitter. This is Sullen Surf, which he does a good job covering the Vols on Twitter. And the fella that predicted him was Josh McHouston out of On3. And I saw where he's usually about 85% accurate, or 87%. I can't remember, something like that. Anyway, that's a really good sign, because On3 is pretty connected when it comes to this sort of stuff. The last thing they want to do is put a crystal ball out there and then it flies in their face, because they care about those numbers a lot. So I did want to cover this. We'll talk a little bit about Deboer. I thought this was a solid hire. Now, he was not their first choice. I'll just go ahead and tell you. They would have loved to have had Steve Sarkisian. They'd loved to have had him. Their big guy that looked like they were after was Dan Lanning. He had a $20 million buyout, and plus Nike probably didn't want him to go. Oregon's a pretty good place to be. They also made a move at Mike Norvell. He only had a $4 million buyout, but FSU's got money, and they weren't going to let him go. And that's a good spot to be. FSU's got a good recruiting base. So I think this is a solid hire. It's probably the best they could do under the circumstances. You know, he's probably their fourth choice. They'd eventually were going to have to go to Lane Kiffin, which would have been their fifth or sixth choice. But that's not odd. They probably called Kirby too, which would have been their very first choice. But, you know, Kirby's set at Georgia. So maybe this guy was their fifth choice. But I don't care who you are. It's really hard to get these coaches that are super successful. They've got money. They got recruiting. They've got everything set. Why would they leave those perfect situations? So Alabama, while it's a really nice job, it's a much better job because of Nick Saban. Well, with Nick Saban not being there, it's not as great a job as it used to be. That all changed in about 2 seconds. So the Vols will be going up against Deboer. I'd much rather play against Deboer than I would a Nick Saban team. That's just look at the history.
Okay.
So I think this is a good hire, good solid hire. It's probably the best they could do. And it's, you know, it's $100 million if you want a really good coach. That's the way it is these days. That's the price of doing business in the NCAA. And now he's got to keep all of these guys. Good luck. they're gonna test that transfer portal and see if they can get some more money. In Alabama, you're going to have to come up with more than $100 million or the 22 up front. You're going to have to get a bunch of money together to keep the guys you got, because now they're going to use that against you as a negotiating tool.
Derek, you better yell! Show me the money!
Because, hey, it's all about the Benjamins right now, and they're going to get the max they can. So anyway, a lot of news out there. Alabama having a new coach. That's going to have not as big of a domino effect as I was expecting. I thought they'd probably get somebody at a major school. Washington is not really that. They're out on the West Coast. I don't think it'll be near the domino effect had they gotten somebody like Sarkisian from Texas, or the Oregon job, or FSU for sure. So we'll see how this all plays out, but looks like that's pretty much a done deal. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all the SEC, Vols, all this big story stuff. And if you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit this little button, costs you nothing, and helps me out. And right over here's the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll like based on your viewing history. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.